Hi there, folks. Simon here. This is the 2022 TAC Championship Tournament, and this is the finals, game 5 and 6, but we're going to start with 5, of course, between alion02 and Ali. And again, this is the TAC Championship, so this is potentially the last two games of the entire tournament, crowning the TAC champion of 2022, or yeah, of 2022, which will carry over to 2023, and we'll get a new one in 2024 potentially if they don't defend their title. And that is really exciting, and I'm really pumped to see who wins. And so just like every game in this tournament, we are playing on a 6x6 board with 15 minutes on the clock and a 15-second increment, meaning 15 seconds gets added to your clock after every turn. Also, we're playing with two komi, meaning if the game does not end in a road, 2 gets added to black's flat count score. So, that is it about this. We have seen the previous 4 games have split, and it's 2-2 right now, so it's anyone's game. Anyone's game at this point between Ali and alion02. Don't know who's going to win it. And they won as white in every game we've seen so far, which is interesting because if we look at last round in the semifinals, alion02 and Abyss, they won as black in every game in their 5 games they played together. So big difference, I'd say. But I'm looking forward to this. But also, we have a very special surprise and a special guest, and that is that we are joined in the commentary booth by none other than fwwwwwibib, or Fwib, the current tag champion.
Hey, not for much longer.
Not for much longer, no. But you still hold the title.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm looking forward to passing it on to one of these two players. I think either of them will be very worthy tag champions. I was obviously Ali beat me in the quarterfinals of this tournament and really played fantastically in that match. And I've been having a look through their previous games in this matchup, and they've all been really excellent, exciting games. So I think they'll both be whoever comes out on top will be a worthy winner.
I couldn't agree more. I'm really excited to see this, and I think that they're ready to go. So I think we're good to give them the go ahead.
Awesome.
Now, we did talk about how you lost to Ali in the quarterfinals. Now, do you think that was because you were a little rusty and hadn't played in a while? Do you think it was just because Ali got a lot better, or a combination of the two, or some other factor?
I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Ali. Like he played a really good, solid set of games. I was not at my best. I missed attack threat in the first game and never really recovered from there. So
It was a
maybe a little
sneaky
bit of
one,
ring
though.
rustiness, but it was a good sneaky threat.
Ooh,
Um,
interesting opening we're seeing here. This is not what I
but
was
yeah,
expecting, especially
we have not
because
seen this one before in this matchup.
yeah, like yeah, this is not what I was expecting. But Ali tends to throw out weird things sometimes. Uh,
Yeah.
and I will say both players do study and practice with the Willem bot, or the strongest AI. They each have a local version that they have played with and studied openings with, and done sort of tests with. And so we are seeing people who have used this top AI to sort of improve their game and really study what their opponents do and that sort of thing. So I think this is that's why these two players are in the top of this tournament, I think.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really exciting development for the game over the last sort of year or so. Seeing obviously more players joining, and sort of very quickly getting to the top level, particularly alion02 and Will, who's the I believe the developer of Will and Bot, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's I think this is kind of the next stage in the development of the game is really digging into opening theory and with the help of those AIs which are getting better, almost kind of quicker than humans are. But I think that in that sense, a rising tide lifts all ships, and as the AIs get better, they'll help us to get better as well.
Yeah. And we're seeing this strange opening here. So we see how white is kind of going for this horizontal and vertical kind of, but they really don't have much going. Black has a little more going on
Hmm.
here with the horizontal down below, and then this capstone being in a position to kind of come over and make this vertical happen along C. That's a little bit more, and I don't know. It's
It's an unusual opening for sure. I don't think
yeah.
I've seen a game really that looked anything like this before. Certainly not at kind of this kind of level. I think it's interesting sort of tactical approach from Ali to almost play a little bit defensively early on, not try and go for a very quick threat, but just trying to put some pieces in the center, develop kind of around what Alion is doing, and now giving Alion potentially the opportunity to seize the initiative by making a threat along the sort of 1 and 2 ranks.
Yeah.
I mean, I expect to see probably. Okay, that's not what I expected. I was thinking C1 or maybe B2, but
Yeah, you're no
Ali
stranger
obviously thinking that
to commentary and knowing that people will make moves that you're not expecting. I know that.
exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, so what I was expecting was, like I said, C1 or B2. I think the reasoning behind going for E2 is that obviously there are four of Alion's flats over in this bottom left-hand corner. And so maybe Ali's thinking he wants to try and put a bit of a roadblock in the way of Alion's development along the bottom of the board, but also start developing his own vertical threat further away from where Alion has those flats. Although he now goes and plays C1 and kind of does the opposite of what I was just suggesting he might be thinking. So I really have no idea what's happening now.
I think it was the E1 that kind of threw him. So he was playing over at
Mm.
E2 to sort of set up that block and also make the connection with the capstone, kind of go for that vertical threat and also block off Black's opportunity to go for the horizontal over there. But the E1 placement kind of threw him, I think. And so he just reverted back to, okay, I'll block over here at C1. This was my second choice. I was kind of flirting with this one or E2 and went back and forth. Decided to go for the C1 to block that off. And now he's still going for that vertical threat. And if the capstone comes left, for example, at some point, the black one, white can fill in there at D2 and keep going for that same vertical threat. So I think that white is building a pretty solid position here. He knows that he's not going to win with a road anytime soon. He knows that black isn't going to get away with a road anytime soon. They're not going to get a Tinue in the next 10 turns because they're both good enough that they can spot those. So white is more interested in setting up this board positioning, making sure that he can keep this keep his position alive without getting tenued or something or sneaky roaded, and then he can keep building that position for later threats. And I think that's what he's focusing on right here. Um, and I think that that is the way to play this, but it's hard to judge sort of who's in the lead, who's taking control of the board when that's sort of the thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it's going to be interesting to see what kind of an approach Alion takes here, as Black having, a little bit gained a little bit of the momentum through this opening. How aggressive does he want to be? So, example of one move which he could consider. He hasn't chosen to go for it just yet, but I'm looking at C3 minus, which would be really quite an aggressive move, moving that flat down onto C2. Um, that potentially creates a liability for later in the game, but that's going to really put the pressure on Ali and also isolates the white capstone somewhat from what's going on this 1 and 2 rank. So,
It does, yeah, I like that. But I like the move that he played here with B2 because it works for a bunch of reasons. Like it feels so strong because You got that connection being made for the horizontal because he can come down with c3 later and make that connection with the capstone, going for that horizontal road. He can also continue playing up at b3, go for that vertical, but he's also cutting off White's ability to sort of build for the vertical or the horizontal on that left side of the black's capstone. And so this whole thing, b2 does all of those things. So that's why we're seeing White shift gears here, going, all right, fine. You've got that left half of the board really locked in. I'm not going to be able to do anything with it over there. I'm going to play over here at e3 and kind of shift my attention over there. Maybe I can work a horizontal up above the black capstone. Maybe I can continue going for this vertical to the right of the black capstone. I think that's what the thought process is, but he's going to have to do something quick, probably placement at f1 here if he wants to stop black from making that early attack threat.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, I was about to wonder whether Alion would really commit to this making this threat down at the bottom of the board, and he seems to be doing so far, although obviously no one's made a capture yet. So yeah, I expect f1 as the most likely option for Ali here. Yeah, there we go.
For both players,
And
really. Yeah.
immediately f2
Yeah.
from Alion.
He knew what he was going to do. He knew that ahead of time. And that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense for both players. It's great for black because he's setting that up. I think what White might need to do is make the capture onto c3 with that capstone
That's
potentially.
exactly what I'm thinking as well. Yeah, I think you really don't want c3 minus taking your capstone out of defending this threat. Plus, capturing c3 gives a sort of second potential vertical threat in future. That's not going to really come to anything because the black capstone can always capture over onto c2, but it will at least mean that the white cap is in this fight.
I think that's important. You don't want to get that capstone isolated, kind of cut away from where all the action is happening. You want to have that in there, in the mix of things, able to make plays and make a difference in those games.
Yeah. The other option I would consider as Ali, a couple of other options. F3 would be I think, somewhat riskier move, but might pay dividends in the long run in that you can then potentially capture over onto E2 and really make quite a powerful vertical threat. But I think this is the safer move, capturing onto C3.
I agree with that. It's you don't want to make that move because you are abandoning sort of that vertical line that you were going for off to the right. And then you also get this capstone coming left, ready to remake that same threat. But it does feel like the better move. But now his capstone again is cut off from that bottom half of the board by black's capstone. And that's a really strong sort of pushing method of sort of controlling where that white capstone can go and making sure that it's not in the mix of things so he can control that action at the bottom half of the board. I think that's really strong. White probably wants to do something like filling in at d2, maybe even drop a wall there, but really wants to make sure black is not making this threat so soon. If he doesn't do that, he could play something like potentially e4, and then playing at e4, what that does is works towards that vertical, and if black plays, for example, at d2, then white could just do e2 right onto f2 and cut that off, go for the vertical that way. But he does drop that wall there to really make sure that he's not letting anything happen down there at the bottom.
Yeah, I think the wall on d2 is probably white's best move here. What you really need to do if you're Ali in this situation is try and pivot the game and where the action is happening to somewhere where his capstone is going to be involved. So you really need to cut off this interplay on the bottom of the board as quickly as possible, and then you can start moving the action into the top half of the board where he has more influence and his capstone is in a position to take over, and will then be blocking the black capstone from the action rather than the other way around. Obviously,
And
Alion recognizes that and is going to immediately start looking to build up into that top half of the board.
Yep. And we're seeing Marigills in the chat is saying, yep, and that wall puts black even further ahead on flats. So he's just playing that long game, making sure he's ahead. We have seen 0 flat on flat captures. We've only seen captures by the capstone so far, which is a thing that you'll notice in a lot of these upper level games. They don't like to make these flat on flat captures, especially early on. Want to avoid that as much as possible until you have to make them, or until it really benefits you for a threat or Tinue or something like that. And so what they're doing is making sure that they're not creating any liabilities for their opponents to take advantage of. And we talk about that in the captures video of TAC University.
Yeah, it's a great series. I recommend everyone goes and checks that out. And absolutely, a wall placing a standing stone it's an immediate loss to your flat count, but it is much less likely to lead to further losses of flat count in the later game. Whereas if you place a flat or you capture with a flat, that can potentially end up being -2 or 3 to your flat count by the end of the game.
So black is making a threat here, and I was really surprised that white would sort of let that happen. And I see why he sort of let that happen. It's because he can capture up with this A3, which is typically a bad move, this flat on flat capture, but because he's got the capstone at C3, able to throw over to that spot, it's not a bad move. It totally works for what he wants to do. He's able to protect that flat stack, and he doesn't have to worry about black capturing it. So that works,
that
and he can regain that
really
momentum to build his own vertical threat before black can do anything about it. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, there's really no way that black can force a road or a Tinue, or even there's not much opportunity for sneaky threats either up this A and B file. So I think white can feel pretty confident that although black can continue to make threats by placing either B4 or A6, it's not going to lead to an uncontrollable situation. And so for that reason, I kind of like developing on D5, sort of working towards your own threat, because with this capture with the capstone, you've got what the black player is doing under control. So you want to start developing your own threats and make Ali wants to make Alion react to what he's doing.
So here, black has played over at C4, and this does two things. It works towards that same vertical threat that black has been going for, but white has the opportunity to do one of two things. Can either play at D6 for the vertical road threat, which C4 can come across and mess up, or black's F2 can come down and create that horizontal threat down below to stop it. And I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to see F2 minus, and that creates the vertical or the horizontal threat along the bottom of the board. And if F2 minus happens, that's going to be a tricky spot to be in for white. White's probably going to do C1 right at that point.
Yeah, I would expect C1 right. That gets, again, it sort of isolates the black capstone even more than it is already. I think this is a good example of for maybe a beginner or intermediate player on that previous turn, rather than playing D6, one might have been tempted to play C3 on the basis that it creates attack threat and it also gets in the way of this vertical road that black is developing. But C3 is really not a very good move for white because it allows the black capstone to come up and to, again, isolate the white capstone from white's road.
Exactly.
So as you said, F2 minus, C1 to the right, attack threat from Ali, so black has to respond.
And so, yep, we're going to see
Interesting. Goes
E1 come up to stop it.
Rather than C4 to the right. I don't love this because it allows the wall to capture on E2 and then the black capstone can't come across.
That's really good.
And crush the wall.
Oh, but he's not. He's just playing at F3, which is the horizontal attack threat. But black could just place a flat there at C3 and create their own threat. So that doesn't feel very good to me. I feel like he wasted that opportunity of moving that wall over onto E2.
I agree. So now Ali has to either disrupt his own road to cut this off or move the capstone across, in which case Alion can just fill in again at B3 and renew the threat. So because of that possibility, decides to capture C4 instead, but now that's taking one of your pieces out of the road that you've just been working on.
But he is making a
And it's a
horizontal
flat on
threat.
flat capture. Yeah, this is true, but again, it's a relatively easy one for Alion to deal with, at least in the short term, by capturing B4
C4.
to the right onto C4.
Yeah, and that stack is what he wants. Like I feel like B4 coming right onto C4 is sort of a no-brainer move. It's definitely positive. You're not going to lose that stack. It works towards
Well,
your vertical, and it might force white to drop yet another wall.
I'll tell you how it does. You do actually lose the stack when you capture there. Is what if Alion plays B4 to the right here? Ali's then going to play 3B3 to the right, create the attack threat, isolate that
Hmm.
stack so
Smart.
that
Very smart.
Alion has to respond to the threat, and then Ali can capture the stack. So it is actually a bit of a tricky situation here, where the natural move to prevent the threat is capturing onto C4. But looking at this position now, I would be seriously considering 2C2 plus, bringing the capstone up, capturing onto your own piece. It's not good again in the short term for your black count differential, but it gets the black capstone into the center and into the game in a way that it is not currently affecting
And
the
blocks
board.
white's capstone from being part of the game.
Exactly.
That's a really solid move. And honestly, I did not think of that capstone stack moving right onto C3 to sort of block that stack and also create the threat. That's not a pattern that I would have seen. So I'm really glad you're here to point that out. And this is also why you are the current tag champion and I am not.
Yeah, well, it's one of the skills that you develop over time playing TAC at a high level is just playing lots and lots of games. You get to recognize some of those patterns, and actually, funnily enough, I've been playing a fair amount of chess this week, and I think this feels like there are some parallels to chess games where you're putting the opponent's king in check in order to force them to make moves that they don't want to make, and then profiting off the back of that.
And we are seeing, so for a while, for most of this game, alion02 actually had a significantly higher time than Ali. Ali was much lower on time, but now we're finally seeing that change here. alion02 is spending a lot of time on this move, trying to figure out how best to deal with this, and is now down to 9 minutes on the clock, a 1 minute separating the two of them.
Yeah, and the time controls in this tournament are pretty generous, but it's still, in these long, tight games, it can definitely become a factor, particularly when in the end game things just get more complicated and you need to spend even more time thinking about what the possible moves are, what the flat count is, because we don't have a flat count counter on playtac.com. There's a lot to think about, so you really need to use that time wisely. I think this move is one where I don't blame Alion for taking a while to think about it, because this could be a really key move in the context of this game. But you don't want to do it for every move, because
Absolutely
then
no.
you end up having to play on your increment and only having 15 seconds per move when it's in the end game, and you're having to count flats and watch out for sneaky threats and continues. That's really tough. Okay, so play C3 to the right.
That is not a move I was expecting, but it doesn't feel bad in the slightest.
No, I think I definitely wasn't expecting it either. Um, it obviously cuts off the threat, and the threat then can't be renewed immediately, so that's a positive in its favor. The I think the natural response for white would be to capture up onto D3 with the wall from D2. That opens things up a little bit for black. Down at the bottom of the board again, he can potentially make another threat of his own by placing onto D2 after the wall moves up.
I actually really like,
But
I was about to say, I really like a flat at d4. That goes
yeah,
for that horizontal threat either right along on 3 or also up above at e6. And so, and it also still works for that vertical that he had going off on the right hand side. So I really like the d4 placement more than moving that wall around because I feel like that wall is kind of instrumental right now. If I want to move it anywhere, I don't want to move it up. I want to move it over onto e2 if I'm white.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is another example of more flats, more better. And if in doubt, looking for the best place to put a flat stone is a good rule of thumb. And I think, as Megils points out in the chat, and Alion seems to agree, this is a spot where black absolutely needs to drop a wall.
And so, what if white decides to drop a flat here at c3? I know that invites black's capstone to come up, and you
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
think
do that.
C3 absolutely, you immediately the black capstone captures up, but similarly, I guess the other most likely option would be E4 to make the threat from the other direction. That would obviously lead the wall to come down. So either, I think on this next turn, either the capstone is coming up or the wall is coming down. It really is then now up to Ali, which of those is less damaging for his position.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't do c3 here just because you'd invite that capstone. Ooh, he comes up with the
Interesting.
wall. I don't, I don't like that very much, but
See, I don't hate it just because of what we said, where you really, it's inviting a flat stone on D2, but you can always capture back down there if you want to, and then again, you're making a threat, so the black capstone won't be able to crush. And C3, like you were saying, definitely we don't want that black capstone coming in and blocking off the white capstone. Um, I was even potentially looking at something like F2 just to develop that vertical threat without um, forcing Alion to do something that you don't want him to do. Um, and I think that this, freeing up those that captive on D3 for white is gonna, you know, really be a problem potentially for Alion, not just in terms of potential roads, but also on the flat count. And this means that now Ali can make an attack threat either vertically or horizontally on the next turn.
I am very intrigued to see what Alian does here because it's not like he's going to just drop a flat at d2. I feel like that
Yeah,
c5 wall coming down onto c4 makes a lot of sense here because then he's able to use that wall stack to come right and kind of interrupt what White's doing and also still work on that vertical connection that he's been building for.
yeah. I think C5 coming down is probably the optimal.
Oh,
Okay,
he just drops
that
the
that's
wall.
so that makes sense in the sense that it makes it very difficult now for Ali to make a serious threat. It is the more conservative play than bring the wall down from C5. But I guess Alion thinks he really wants to cut off this potential horizontal threat so that his capstone can focus on uh, preventing the vertical threat from developing. Um, and then also, again, we spoke about Ali looking to move the action to the top half of the board, and this is Ali on now saying, "No, I want to go back back to the 1 and 2 ranks where I've got 5 pieces to, or 6 pieces to your one."
I think what he wanted to do, what Ali wanted to do, that wall stops, is Ali wanted to throw that capstone stack, go 3b3 right 2 1, and smash his own wall, creating Tinue.
Yeah, that would have been a yeah. I mean, stopping Tinue is generally a good thing to do. So well done for Ali um, on spotting that one.
I definitely didn't spot it. That was actually Arch Venison in the chat mentioning that.
Yeah.
And apparently c5 minus, the wall coming down on c4, um, loses to Tinue somehow. And I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
so
The
C5 minus allows
yeah,
the self smash,
the cell smash.
and doesn't allow you to block both threats. So
So that's why the chat, Mary Dills and Abyss were talking about that. I did not spot that capstone throw move. I had thought about smashing earlier, but I gave up on it, and I obviously should not have.
yeah, I mean it was a tricky one to spot, particularly because it almost looks like the white capstone was pinned in that position, sitting with that black flats underneath it and almost a road up A
Yeah.
and B for black. But because you can take both flats, drop them on C3, it would have prevented a road on the next turn from Alion, and Ali could have won in either direction at that point.
I think what black is now doing is saying, all right, I'm building my horizontal threat so he can play at d2 for the road. If white plays here at d2, that would be a threat for white. I think the idea would then be to bring that capstone over onto d2.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that capstone is then also threatening to capture and release the captive on D1. So tricky spot here for Ali now. Yeah, he's close. He's close to making a lot of threats, but none of those threats are extremely robust. So I think Alion, it's still very tight. Like this game could go either way. I'd say it's pretty even, but Alion is, it's been a lot of back and forth in terms of who's got the momentum, who's sort of forcing the other player to respond to their moves, and currently it's Alion that's doing that.
And it's just really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think this tournament has been probably the highest level of attack that we've seen, certainly that I can remember, and it's been really exciting to see the new players like Alion coming in, and just that everyone's been raising their games.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Not a move I
Well, okay.
expected to see.
No. Now, obviously, Alion can't jump across and take that stack with the capstone because you would have to leave a white flat on D2, and then you could take the drawbridge win for white by taking that wall off D3 to the right and leaving a road behind. So if I'm black, I'm looking at just dropping, and probably dropping another wall on most likely D2. But that does slow down the development of this potential threat
So if you drop a wall on
and gives
d2,
Ali the
wouldn't
opportunity to.
wouldn't white just do 2e2 minus?
2e2 minus wall and d2. If white plays 2e2 minus, then you can take a cross onto e2 with the wall. It doesn't immediately take the stack, but it does then allow you to take it on the next turn. And if Ali then fills back in to make the threat on d2, your capstone can then come across.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, for me, anytime I'm looking at, particularly if there are two stacks with captives in a position where the wall can threaten both of them, that's the first thing I'm looking at. But there is a lot to think about in this position where if Alion plays too many walls, you can get down on flat count, and also Ali is still in a position to start making tack threats
The
on the
wall at
northern,
f2. Now I
top half of the
think I
board.
know why he went for the wall at f2 here. And it's because I was looking at a line of threats where white continues the threat going off on the right hand side and being able to throw d1 all the way to f1 for a road. And I think that's why he chose a wall at f2 here. And
Yeah,
he
that
took
makes
quite a bit of time to
sense.
do it. I mean, he's down below 4 minutes now.
Yes, definitely time becoming more of a factor for Alion here. Yeah, we're 23 moves into the game. This kind of game where there's a lot of walls on the board, and we're looking at most likely a flat end game. Easily looking at sort of 40 to 50 moves. So we're probably only just over halfway through the total move count, and Alion is under 4 minutes left. So he's going to want to start playing more quickly if he can to try and earn some of that time back through the increment. So as we sort of predicted from the other direction, the wall drops down to E2 minus, and then the wall comes across onto E2 to threaten taking that
So Abyss is saying
stack.
that White can bury the weaknesses on F1 forever. Yeah, and that's what he does. He takes
There
that
you
whole
go.
stack, brings it over onto F1. Now, if Black brings a wall down, White can wall next to it, and if Black captures
Yeah,
onto the
and then
stack, White walls on the other side of it, and then that whole stack is just stuck behind two walls.
yeah, putting the prisoners in a prison.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that locks behind your own flats, but also your opponent's flats. I think it's a net negative for White, but I think the alternative at this point, because of the positioning, it's definitely a positive.
Yeah, you definitely don't want Black getting hold of that stack and spreading them all out, creating both a big flat count differential advantage and also potentially leading to some difficult to manage road threats.
And Black can't pin this down unless he drops another wall, because if he moves the wall for any reason or drops a flat or something like that, I don't think that that's enough to really get a hold of this stack.
Yeah, and if we're looking at the current flat count, uh, at the moment it's 10 to White and 8 to Black, including the Komi. So White is up on flats and can kind of afford to take a little bit of a hit on the flat count in order to prevent the opportunity for a more significant swing back to Black.
Yeah, I think that was a really smart play here from Ali. And honestly, throwing all that stuff in the corner and then surrounding it by walls, which is I think what's going to happen. I I don't know that I would have thought of that, to be honest. That's not my style of play, and I'm definitely spotting weaknesses in my style of play because I'm not
Mm.
spotting why they're doing these moves uh, in that moment, and that's it's a learning opportunity for me.
Yeah, I think that anytime you're watching really good players play, and particularly I think in this match where we've seen a lot of really quite innovative openings and positions and some very creative lines. It's been really instructive to watch some of that and see how some of the best minds in the game approach these kind of high pressure situations. So Alion, well, now down to almost a minute on the clock. I spoke earlier about obviously choosing your times to think. This is one where I wouldn't have wanted to pause for this long on this particular move. I think dropping a wall on either E1 or E2 is a natural move and is also it's not ideal, but I don't think there's any clear
Yeah,
alternative course of action. And
he does
eventually that
drop
is
it,
what he does. And
and then the wall at
here we go.
F2.
We're gonna F2 takes it, so wall F2, and the prison has been uh, set. That corner is not going anywhere.
And then Black coming down onto C4 gives Black an opportunity to make a +3 flat count differential move.
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, it's you're much better off taking the +2 flat count differential move because if you take the +3, then
White comes back and
you're
recovers.
giving
Yeah.
white a +2, so it's effectively only a +1. So, but it we'll obviously see how the game develops. There may be other stacks that appear.
Or he could decide to bring the whole stack over and then spread it upwards for a different +3 move. Probably not
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
But now white playing up at b5. Um, I guess okay. So white's gonna go for the horizontal threat. c5,
yeah,
e6, and then he can throw a3 all the way up to a5.
yeah. I think that's definitely what white is looking for here. Um, and really, at this point, with 2/3 of that main diagonal walled off, realistically, we're unlikely to be seeing any a road deciding this game. But even when you know that the game is going to flats, it's important to be the one who's able to create road threads. So for Ali, he really wants to try and develop his connection across the top of the board here. And similarly, Alion, you can see, is both by placing a6, both preventing somewhat Ali's possibilities for connecting to that left-hand side of the board, but also trying to manufacture some kind of threat of his own in the only place where he can, which is along the A file.
I think um, I think that Alion's trying to set up a Tinue pattern off to the left, but I don't think it's going to work because that b5 flat is there. It can cut things off and make it not work out for him. But it's still a dangerous spot for white to be, and he's got to keep an eye on that because black placing at a2 and then making the capture up onto a3 is a tricky spot.
Yeah, and one significant thing that it does is it limits the movement of the white capstone.
Hmm.
So sometimes what you'll see in the flat end games is when it's getting close and a lot of big stacks appear, you'll see capstones flying all over the place, smashing walls, trying to create an advantage that way. And if you've got the capstone pinned, you're not in danger of losing to something like that.
So we do see that currently it is 10 to 10 in terms of flats, but black does have the +2 and the +2 or +3 move. So if they start running down low on reserves, okay, if we see the +2 move to cut off white's threat,
Yeah,
and
and
white does not have any positive flat count differential moves.
it's also worth noting that I think black has 9 reserves left, and yeah, and white has 10. So black is currently in control of when this game ends.
And so white being behind now means that white needs to do something to recover and make some positive flat count differential moves, or they're going to lose despite being seemingly in control right now in this point of the game.
Yeah. If I'm Ali here, I'm looking to bring my capstone up onto b4. Try and get it into a place where it's more in a position to help create that kind of road threat through either 4 or 6 and potentially threaten the stack on c5. Obviously, the danger with moving the capstone here is it potentially gives Ali on the opportunity to work more on creating that vertical road. So it's risky, but I think given the flat situation, might be necessary.
Yeah, this seems tough. I feel like black is in a better position now than white, specifically because of that flat count and not having any opportunity to regain any right now. It's going to have to be some clever, creative moves from Ali, even though alion02 is down to 35 seconds on the clock, which means he was
Yeah,
down to
and
20 seconds when he made his last move.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that we can say is that Alion is quite used to, I think, playing with not much time on the clock. Maybe not quite as low as Abyss often gets, but this isn't a new experience
Hmm.
for Alion.
They are
So,
two peas in a pod when it
um,
comes to playing on low time, Abyss and Allion. And Manatee's
yeah,
saying if there's one player who I think can make something happen for White here, it's Ali, and I agree with him. Ali is very creative when it comes to making these insane patterns and tenues and things like that.
absolutely. I think that's one of Ali's biggest strengths is just his ability to turn seemingly hopeless situations into wins out of nowhere by sort of taking the line that nobody expects. The problem for him here is there are so many walls on the board that it's very difficult to see where that threat that is going to break things open is going to come from. So in terms of the current flat count, we're looking at 8, 13 for white and 13 for black. Black plays next, then white plays, and then black. If it's just flats from here, we could end up with a board fill, and black would win by placing their last flat.
So White
So
needs to make a capture
Ali
that opens up a
needs to make a
spot,
capture. Yeah, and
but
I think
White,
for
but
me,
then
I think
Black
it.
will fill in to wherever that is to avoid playing at either D2 or E3, because playing at D2 or E3 gives White a
Yes,
+2 move.
exactly. So what I think what I expect to see here is 3B3 plus, bring the capstone up, B3 filling in behind it, and then you're gonna have to play 2A3 plus. Black fills in again behind, and then it's a question of what. I guess you then are looking at the
B5
stack.
plus.
Yeah, or B4 to the right.
Oh, I see what he's
Not in,
doing. He played there so that if Black played another flat, he could spread the wall stack down and make a positive flat on differential move.
yes. Yeah, so that's makes sense from that point of view, but it does give black the opportunity to capture this stack. And now white can't place any flats in that corner, uh, in that sort of C2, D2 area. Otherwise, you're giving black more positive flat count differential moves. Um, so yeah, if it's me, I'm Ali. I'm really looking to get my capstone involved. Um, but he's also running low on time to make something happen because there's only 6 more flats available to Ali on.
Now, if he plays a white flat here, that's oh no. Oh, but Black can spread if he spreads the capstone left, does that end up making Tinue for Black? Because if White keeps dropping flats and they go to board fill now, I think it ends up being either a draw,
Well,
but I think Black's jumping this whole stack left makes a threat that ultimately works out for
well, there
Black, I think.
is there. So there's B5 to the if Alion does try and make some kind of throw threat along the A file, you've got B5 to the left and then C6 to the left that can help to cut that off. That things get a bit screwy with that. I'm not sure exactly how it plays out. So I think Alion is taking the seeing as he's up on flats currently, taking the safer route, just filling in on C2. And now Ali has to make a capture. If he plays on D2, then black wins by board fill. Places on D1, then Alion just captures and gets a positive flat count move out of that. Um, and Ali now also under a minute on the time. I've been saying it for a few moves now, but I think 3B3 plus is uh, the only chance for white to manufacture something here. And Alion does play it. Okay. So for black, the obvious move is placing B3, creating a threat. That's what he does. And now I think we'll see Ali bring A3 up onto A4. This isn't currently a attack threat, but it is getting close to one, and Alion is gonna have to think about that. But the question is, how has Ali left himself enough time to create something when Alion only has 4 flat stones left?
So now b5 plus to make the road threat.
B5 plus makes a road threat, but again, Alion can just fill in. Oh no, he can't
He
just fill
can't
in
fill
because
in.
A3, A4
A4 goes all the
going
way up
up.
to A6 to make the road. And
Interesting.
so he's got to capture right onto A6 or capture up with the wall, but that doesn't do anything. So I think the A6 right is going to be the move, or capturing onto A4. But if he captures A4, then the capstone comes over.
Yeah, and then you end up with a spread that is gonna lose out the
And Alion down to 5 seconds on
blackout
the
lead.
clock. He's got to do something quick. Ali still has over a minute. 2 seconds. 1 second.
1 second.
Oh my gosh,
Oof.
he had less than a second
0.8 of a
left.
second. Wow. Okay. Uh,
He's Ali is
okay.
really hoping that Alion runs out of time. I think that he's pushing. He made that move so fast. He's making
And now
sure.
Alion's forced to drop a wall. Can Ali turn this into something? Problem is that now he's got more liabilities sitting in that stack, and I don't see any way to make an immediate threat. So Alion is going to be able to take those liabilities back,
Well,
make some spreads, and I think
if the wall comes up, then he can still smash.
he can smash. Wow, that would be very interesting. Makes the threat. Alion has to capture.
He can drop. Oh, if he dropped a wall, it would leave him behind, wouldn't it?
Yeah. He's already.
So he
Okay,
makes the
smash comes
smash.
in.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
He's got some life in him still.
So now what does Alion do? Capture down onto a. Oh no, place the wall because it's a threat.
Yeah. And now,
And now has only one stone left, so can't place another stone because I believe certainly after this capstone moves, Ali's going to be up on the flats. Let's take a quick count: 6, 10, 12 for white, and 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 for black. So if it was black's move, black could win, but it's not. It is white's move, so Ali needs to figure out what he's got going here. Makes the positive flat count move. Makes a threat, which is very important because it means that Alion can't take that big stack on b5.
mm-hmm.
Uh,
And he's got
does
less than
Alion do
he's got
something
5 seconds on the clock
crazy?
too.
Like it might need to be c3 plus
Self-capture.
here.
Yep. Self
Yep,
capture
there you go,
C3
c3 plus.
so he can spread it right and
And
make more positive flat count differential moves there.
yeah, and now does Ali defend the big stack of liabilities on b5 by putting the capstone back up? With this much time, with so little time on the clock, this is going to get really
I
hairy.
think he may moves b5 to a5. The whole stack on b5
That's
to
also
a5 because
then
then the
throw
wall
isn't.
coming left makes a road for white.
Yeah.
But can he
So
see
if
that? And he's got 35 seconds left. He didn't. He just played at b6.
plays
He
at
wants
b6.
to get a flat down.
Yeah. So
I guess
now
he doesn't have to worry because he can still smash.
he can
that
still
stack.
smash on the. Yeah. Alion doesn't have a threat that prevents the smash. So instead of taking the big stack,
Now he's got
a4.
a threat that white has to
now
stop.
He's got a threat.
And
White has to stop it. So
uh,
you expect that the capstone would come across here, but that then leaves the b5
the
stack
d3
open.
wall can come all the way left to a3.
That's a
But
good
it leaves
spot.
behind a positive flag and differential move for
leave
black.
Yeah, and it opens things up for if the black capstone comes up. I think Ali might be able to. Yeah, I was just about to say a wall on a5. I think is probably necessary here for white, and I think he's got the breathing room just about in terms of the flat count to do that. Again, this is one of the most difficult things about these kind of situations is trying to keep track of what the flat count is through all of these crazy moves.
White can smash b6 here.
True. Is there any
It was a
advantage to
road
that
threat.
though?
It was a
It was
road
right there,
threat
but
to
I
smash
think
it, to force black to drop yet another wall, which he wouldn't be able to do because he had one flat left. That would have been a win. White would have
yeah,
won.
that's
It was a
wow.
Tinue. Oh, I think it was Tinue or
I'd
Galet.
like to look at that one again.
Yeah, we'll have to look at
But
that.
for
But
the
I think
moment,
that
okay, so
was I think that was a winning move.
big sack gets taken, white white smashes, and it looks like it's all over for Alion now.
So 11
Can't
for
place.
black.
He's got yeah.
Black wins.
Oh, black wins.
Yeah,
Wow, that's a
he's up on
massive
flats.
miscalculation from Ali.
Yeah, he miscounted there.
Wow. Because he had positive flat count differential moves by spreading the A4 stack.
Mm-hmm.
Must have just miscounted and loses by 1 on flats. What a game.
Oh yeah,
And the
that's
first win by
awful.
black in these finals.
We know that Ali struggles with end flat count games. He's mentioned it a bunch of times that's a weakness of his, that he miscounts a lot and that he has trouble with very much end games. But I believe here, if we look over at okay, so when he comes down with a5 on 45, if he had instead come up and smashed on b6, so if he smashes at
Then
b6,
so if you smash at b6, you have to leave a black flat on top of b5,
correct.
which means that c5 plus prevents the road, and so it's. I don't think it's
Yeah,
Tinue.
not Tinue, but it feels like really good.
Yeah, well, actually, no, isn't it? If you're leaving a black flat on top of b5, can't black just spread to the right for the win? I think you're just giving black a road if you leave a black. Oh no, because you can leave the white flat on b4.
On
If
b4,
you go
yeah.
+1/1,
I don't know. It's a really tricky position, and they both had under a minute to go, so there's no way. They are taking. Oh, Ali in the Discord saying that was gutting, um,
uh, yeah,
which yeah,
yeah,
I
no,
get it.
that was a rough one. It was an incredible game and a really rough way to finish when Ali had put himself in a position to win and just didn't quite keep the count. And we were talking about it with so little time left on the clock. Keeping track of who's up on flats is really important, and it's a really difficult skill. And it just cost Ali in this case.
Yeah, and man, it was a fantastic game though. Just so hard to keep track of things when you're so low on time. I totally get it. Ali's saying he's never been very great at counting. Yeah, I feel you. I think one of my videos where I did self commentary, it was just me counting over and over and over again. Every turn I would count multiple times the amount of flats from both players, and so I was like, sorry guys for the counting video, but I'd be great on Sesame Street.
Yeah,
We are gonna take a
Count
quick
Simon.
break. Um, for I think they wanted to take a 20-minute break between these two games, and must have been
Yeah, I think that's. I don't blame them. That was intense.
yeah, it was intense, and it makes a lot of sense because this final game here, Ali needs to win as black, or alion02 wins the entire tournament and the title of TAC champion.
Yeah, and given that Alion only started playing last year, that would be a really incredible result. So either way, this is going to be a really exciting potentially final match.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this last game. But I will say that both players played phenomenally well. And again, congratulations to alion02 for winning Game 5 and putting yourself ahead into a very strong position where you want to be going into Game 6. Thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to check out the description below for all things TAC, especially the TAC Discord server, which is where you can find all sorts of TAC resources like strategy guides and people to play with, whether that be right here on playtac.com or asynchronously through the Discord server itself, playing with all sorts of people. And honestly, there's so many more things in the Discord there for you to mess around with. And we host tournaments all the time. There's a beginner tournament ongoing right now as I'm filming this. I guess this would be recording this. And yeah, lots of great events we've got going on. You can check out at playtac.com and see all of those. So thanks again, and until next time, have a great day and happy tacking.